We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Amud Beis in Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesubos Daf 30b. On the previous summit, the Gemara said that from the times the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the Arba Misos Bezdin, they also ended. However, the Gemara says, Din Arba Misos lo batlu. But the din of the judgment of the four Misos, they have not been nullified. Rashi over here says, Din Dalad Misos Onesh Dugmasa, meaning to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will cause those kinds of punishments, even though Bezdin is no longer administering those kinds of punishments. And the Gemara explains, Mishin is Chayev Skila. For example, let's say somebody is chayav skila, or nofel min hagag, either he'll fall off a roof, or chaya dorsasa, or he'll be torn up by a wild animal. Or mishan is chayav sreifa, or let's say somebody is chayav sreifa, so or nofel bedleika, either he's going to fall into a fire, or nachash ma'akisha, or he'll be bit by a snake. Or mishan is chayav hariga, and somebody who's chayav hariga, meaning beheading, or nimser lamalchus, either he's going to be given over to the government, or listim boy and olive, or plunderers will come upon him. Or mishan is chayav chenek, and somebody who's chayav chenek, strangulation, or tovea ban or either he's going to drown in a river, or meis bisrunchi, or he's going to die at bisrunchi. Srunchi is asachra, it's diphtheria. Ela epach, and so the Gemara says, you're right. Rather, you have to reverse it, because these things do happen. These arba misas do happen b'dei shamayim, and rather it is as follows, the Gemara says, Arya veganvi b'dei shamayim. Lions and thieves, that actually is caused b'dei shamayim, that is caused by the heavens, and sinim upachim, when it comes to cold and heat, b'dei adam, that is something that is caused by man, meaning it's up to a person, how the person behaves in terms of whether he will suffer from cold or from heat. And the Gemara continues, Rava Omar, Rava says, Taimad Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana mehacha. The reason of Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana, again, Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana was the one who says that Yom Kippur and Shabbos are identical when it comes to Tashlumin, meaning just like when you violate Shabbos, so then the punishment is going to be skila and there's going to be no Tashlumin. Let's say the thing that the person did in general causes a chiyuv of Tashlumin, but it was also a violation of Shabbos. So just like that's true by Shabbos, that there's no Misa and Tashlumin, so too on Yom Kippur, where the punishment is Kares, there's no Kares and Tashlumin. And so the Gemara now says, Rav is saying the reason for Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana comes from the following pasuk. It says, V'im halem yalimu am ha'oretz eseinehem mino ishahu besito mizaro l'molech. Let's say the people, they ignore this person who gave over his children to the molech avodah zara. V'samti anias panai bo ishahu v'mishpachto. So I'm going to place my attention towards that person and his family. V'chrati yoso, and I'm going to cut him off. He's going to get kares. And so therefore the Gemara now understands as follows. Amra Torah, the Torah says, kares shali. My punishment of kares is kemisa shalachem, is being compared over here to the misa that's administered in Bezdin. Ma misa shalachem pater min tashlumin, just like when it comes to misas Bezdin, so the halach is you get misas Bezdin and there is no chiyuv tashlumin. Af kares shali pater min tashlumin. So too when it comes to kares, there's not going to be a chiyuv tashlumin. And Rashi over here explains nofel min hagag. Why is skila? Why is stoning similar to falling off a roof? Doma leniskal shedoch v'nosomi beis haskila la'aretz. They used to push a person off a cliff before the person got skila. Chaya dorsaso, a wild animal is going to tear the person up. That's also by skila. Ari mapilo la'aretz v'hargo bedrisa. The idea is the same thing. The lion pushes him to the ground and tears him up. Nachash makisho v'ha'eres sarfo. That was compared to sreifa, burning, when a snake bites, because there's venom, and that's similar to or considered similar to a fire. Nimsar lamalchus, when it comes to beheading, so the person will be given over to the government. V'hein matizin rosha b'sayif. The government will generally kill someone with a sword. Kechein derech hamumasan al yedei and v'zuhi misa sayif. That's the way those governments used to treat people. That's misa sayif. And again, srunchi is asachra v'hu begaron. So asachra also, that is a disease that's in the throat, and that's why it's similar to chenek. Mino isha hu shuchay misas bezin. And so then we have another source from Nechunya ben Hakon. It says, let's say they don't give him misas bezin like they should. So the pasuk says, v'samti anias panei v'chrati. So instead he's going to get kares, the pasuk says. Lamadnu shakares b'makom misa v'chilufa. So that's what you see from this pasuk, that kares is kind of a substitute for misa, and they exchange with one another. And the Gemara continues, Mai ika bein Rava li Abaya. So what is the difference between the reason that was given by Rava and the reason that was given by Abaya? Rava, again, was the pasuk above that compares kares to misas bezin. Abaya, in the previous summon, he learned it out from the pasuk, from the word ason. It says ason by misa b'dei shamayim, by misa b'dei adam. So we compare the two. And so the Gemara says, ika beinayu, the following is the difference between Rava and Abaya. Zor sha'achal truma. Let's say you have a situation of a non-Kohen who eats truma. So in that situation, there is a chiyav misa b'dei shamayim. shamayim, and there's also a possible payment. So li'abaya potter, according to Abaya, all misa b'dei shamayim is potter from tashlumin. There is no tashlumin in this case. U'l'rava chayav, but according to Rava, the person is going to be chayav because this is not a case of kares, it's just misa b'dei shamayim. According to Rava, the source is specifically by kares. Rashi over here says, zar shachal truma b'mezid hu b'misa b'dei shamayim v'lo b'kares. If a zar eats truma b'mezid, the halacha is that the punishment again is misa b'dei shamayim and not kares. Kares hu v'zaron and nashon. By kares, the difference between misa b'dei shamayim and kares, Rashi says, kares is when he and his children are punished. T'chsiv aririm yihiu, that's what it says in the pasuk, aririm yihiu. Li'abaya potter mitashlumin denafkalei me'ason b'dei shamayim. V'chol ason b'mashma bein b'misa bein b'kares. According to Abaya, the source is from the word ason, that applies to kares, it applies to any misa b'dei shamayim, so you're potter from tashlumin. And again, according to Rav, in this situation, it's not kares, so the person's going to be chayiv in tashlumin. But the Gemara continues, Uli Abaya Potter, but is that really true according to Abaya in the situation of a Zar that eats Truma? Is he really going to be Potter from Tashlumin according to Abaya? V'yomer Rav Chisda, but Rav Chisda said, Moder Rav Nechunya ben Hakone. The Rav Nechunya ben Hakone admits in the following case that the person is chayiv in Tashlumin. Let's say you have a case as follows, Begonev chelbo shel chavero v'yochlo. Let's say a person steals the chelev of his friend and then he eats it. Shu chayiv, so in that case he's going to be chayiv in Tashlumin. Why? Shekvar nischayiv begeneva kodem sheboli de yisr chelev, because he was already chayiv in terms of the stealing it. That actually happened before he actually had the isser of eating chaylev, and therefore it didn't happen at the exact same moment, so he's still going to be chayiv in the tashlumin. And so the Gemara says, Alma, what do we see from this? The me'idna de agabe kanye, from the moment that he lifted it up, so he was koned, he acquired it, that's considered the geneva. And mischayiv benavsho lo have, but he's not chayiv in terms of the eating it, adachale, until he actually goes ahead and he eats it. And so therefore the same should apply when we're talking about the zar she'achal truma. Hachanami here also, bidna de agbe kanye, from the moment that he lifted up the truma, so he already acquired it, there should be a chiyav tashlumin. Mischayiv benafsha lo have, but there shouldn't be a chiyav in terms of the eating it, adachale, until he actually eats it. So for a different reason, you should be chayiv in tashlumin in the case of zar she'achal truma, and that is that the chiyav tashlumin and the chiyav misa, they do not happen at the same time. Rashi over here says, Uli Abaya Potter Bitmiya. It doesn't make sense to say Potter in this case. Nihi nami de misa b'dei shamayim poteros mi tashlumin. Even if I grant that it is true that misa b'dei shamayim says you don't have to have tashlumin. Aval hecha de achel truma de gezela mi mifta. But if you have a situation of eating truma which he stole, so is he really Potter in that case? Hakevan di agba kanya. But the moment that he lifts it up, that's the kinyan. V'chayev v'tashlumin, it creates a chiv in terms of payment. V'afilu tisarif. Now even if it would be burned at this point, he'd have to pay. U'mischayev b'nafshe lo have adach. However, he's not going to be chayiv in terms of the eating until he actually eats it. That's when you're going to have that chayiv. And so therefore, again, if it doesn't happen at the same time, he should not be potter from tashlumin. And so the Gemara answers, Hacham Mayaskina, no, here what are we talking about? In this case of the Zar Sha'achal Truma, how can we have a situation where the Chi of Misa and also the Chi of Tashlumin, they come at the exact same time? Let's say it's his friend who sticks it into his mouth. So then the time of the acquisition and the time of the eating are identical. But the Gemara says, no, still it's not true. Kevan de la Asiye Kanye, once he starts chewing it, he's going to have acquired it. But Mischayev ben Avshalohav ad but he's not chayev in terms of the Chi of Misa, in terms of eating the item, until he actually swallows it. So it's still going to be at a different time. But the Gemara says, no, you can have the following case. Let's say he stuck it into the area where it's already being swallowed. So now the eating and the acquisition happen at the same time. But the Gemara still doesn't like the answer. Hey Chidami, what exactly is the case? If he put it into an area where he's able to retrieve it and the food is not ruined, so nahader, so he should have to retrieve it. In other words, there is a situation over here where he's actively eating it. He should have taken it out, and therefore it's not happening at the same time. And ilom matzi ladur. Now, if he's not able to retrieve it, if his friend stuck it in there and there's nothing he could do about it, so amai chayiv. So why should he be chayiv? He hasn't done anything. There is no chayiv. He hasn't done any action. And so how are you going to have a situation over here where again it's the exact same time that there's the chiyuv for stealing it and the chiyuv for eating it? And the Gemara says, lo no tzricha, we need it in the following situation. The matzi la'adure al yedei adechak. He would be able to retrieve it, but it would be a difficult situation to do that, and therefore in that situation there is an action that he is doing, but again it is all happening at the same time. We'll take a look at Rashi over here. Rashi says, Shatachav lo chaver de lo agbe v'lo kanya. Again, his friend did it and put it into his mouth, therefore he didn't lift it up, he didn't make a kinyan. V'lo machai b'tashlumin, therefore there's no chiyav tashlumin at that point. Ela b'vliyasa, only at the time he swallows it. Mischayev demei hanoyas meyav, then he's chayev at that moment in time the value of the pleasure that he got from eating it. V'lo demei kul, he actually wouldn't be chayev for the entire value because he didn't do an actual acquisition, a normal way of stealing. Uv'yishayta chiyav misa namika. Now at that time of the swallowing, there's a chiyav misa and there's a chiyav for that hanoah that he got. But then the Gemara said, no, even if it was stuck into the beis habliya, if he can retrieve it, he should retrieve it. And if he didn't retrieve it, so from that moment he's creating the damage. The rishon lav midiyavid, the first person didn't do anything. And therefore he's not chayiv. The first one is not chayiv anything to the kohen. And if he's not able to retrieve it, so he wouldn't be chayiv anyway. Misa, meaning he's not chayiv misa onasu, because in that situation he wasn't honest, so there would be no chayiv misa in such a situation. And so the Gemara, in the end, they answered al yedei hadachak. The case is that he could retrieve it, but it would be difficult. The inami hadra, what that means to say is as follows: if he does go ahead and retrieve it, mimasa v'lo chazil l'baylim, it's going to be disgusting. It's not going to be fit for the owners. Hilkach, therefore, migzal lo gazla. Therefore, he hasn't really stolen anything over here because it was stuck inside of him, and there's nothing he could do to return it. So amayka mechayeves la. So if that's the situation, so what is he chayev on in terms of tashlumin? But tashlumin hanoas grono meyav, that he's chayev only to pay for the pleasure, the benefit that he derived in terms of it going into his stomach. And at that moment there is in fact a chiyav misa, because again he's able to retrieve it al yedei adachak. It is considered like he is doing something. So again, it was stuck into his mouth by somebody else, or stuck into the beis habliya by somebody else. It's not considered that he stole it at all, because there was no way to return it. But there is a chiyav tashlumin at that moment in that situation, because he did benefit. He has a chiyav tashlumin in terms of the hana, and at that very same moment, because he could retrieve it al yedei adachak, so he is doing an action, and therefore there's a chiyav misa in terms of the eating it. And the Gemara continues, Rav Papa says a different answer. You have a simple case. Let's say it was truma, but it was a liquid. He stuck that into his mouth. So in that situation, you don't have to come up with a strange case. As Rashi over here says, Mashkin shel truma v'lo tidcha kol shenuya bebeis habli. You don't have to say he stuck it into the area where it's already being swallowed. The moment it goes into his mouth, it's disgusting. There's no way to return it in terms of the gezela. He's not chayiv in terms of the gezela, because the other person put it in his mouth. It's not fit for anything at that point. But he's chayiv to pay in terms of the benefit that he got, that he derived. And again, you have a situation where the death penalty and also the tashlumin, they all happen at the exact same moment in such a case. And the Gemara continues, Rav Ashi says a different answer. Bizarre sha'achal truma mishalo. You can have a situation of a non-Kohen who ate truma, but it was his own truma. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph.